They say revenge is a dish best eaten cold.
Served.
What?
Best served cold.
Oh.
Today I'm going to talk about a film called Dinner Rush. Dinner Rush is a film that I discovered recently. It stars Danny Aiello. Danny Aiello is a great actor in my mind, one of the most awesome actors to watch on the screen. Always a great personality. He's been in Hudson Hawk, which is another one of my favorite guilty pleasure movies from the 90s. A movie that I grew up on, a movie that I watched a lot as a kid, watched and rewatched. And, it starred Bruce Willis, and Danny Aiello was kind of his buddy in that movie. And they had this great heist scene where they sing a song, and that song was pretty infectious and got stuck in my head a lot. And that's how I kind of remember or think about Danny Aiello when he comes up. When his name gets brought up, I think Hudson Hawk. But you know what? I saw this film called Dinner Rush from 2000, 2001 just very recently. I had never heard of it before, and I just kind of was scrolling. I was scrolling. I was looking for a new film to watch. I was looking for something new that caught my attention, and I saw Danny Aiello's face on the cover. So I stopped, and I was like, what could this be? And I saw dinner in it, and I think I clicked on it. I watched the trailer, and I was almost immediately hooked. I saw that it was in a restaurant, New York, Italian, and it just looked like it had the music was on point. It looked like it had a good vibe. So I watched it, and man, I was blown away. I was blown away. I was like, wow, how have I not heard of this before? And man, it just instantly became one of my favorite films. I know I'm going to rewatch this. I've already rewatched it a couple of times since I first saw it, but I know this is going to be a film that I go back to a lot just because it hit so many sweet spots with me. First, yes, Danny Aiello was the thing that brought me to it because, damn, I love when he acts in movies, and how he kind of has this presence about him, and it's perfect for this character in this film Dinner Rush because kind of let me set this up a little bit. This is a film mostly about a restaurant, about an Italian restaurant in TriBeCa, which is a part of New York City. This restaurant is owned by Danny Aiello. It was owned by his father, it got passed down to him. Very, old school restaurant, you know, that's been there. And now it's kind of going through a transition because the chef, which is the son of Danny Aiello, so Danny Aiello, who owns the restaurant, his son is the main chef. But his son, it's kind of like a little bit of a difference going on between them because the son is, pulling all these kind of weird recipes and just very modern, so all of his Italian dishes that he puts on the menu, it's like not traditional at all. Like this is a guy that's more about like he's a star chef. It's more about him and how he twists up the food than it is about really just making a good traditional Italian meal. So that's kind of where, the film kind of starts where Danny Aiello, who owns this restaurant, he's kind of just seeing it like it's almost like not a place for him anymore because he just likes a traditional spaghetti and meatball. He just wants something good off the menu, something that he grew up on. Just nothing crazy. He doesn't need anything fancy. Just something quality, good, and homemade. But his son is doing all this fancy stuff, this way just stuff that just doesn't appeal to him at all. But guess what? The restaurant is popping every single day of the week. People come in there because they love the star chef and they love what he's doing. Even if it doesn't vibe with the dad, even if he likes it a little more traditional, he can't, deny that damn the restaurant's doing well. So he doesn't want to mess with it too much. But he's also starting to think, maybe it's his time. Maybe it's his time to kind of, have this transition go on where he lets his son take the reins. So that's kind of setting up where we are in this film and knowing that it's mostly taking place within one night within this restaurant. What I love so much is there's so much stuff built into this restaurant. There's so many characters' lives that inhabit this one restaurant. There's a waitress who's also an artist. There's an art critic that comes in and sits down at the table. There's a food critic. There's a sous chef that's also has a gambling problem. Head chef, Danny Aiello's son, who's also kind of a tyrant. He really, really is like Gordon Ramsay-esque in how he tries to drill down and fire the people in his kitchen. So there's all these characters. There's the bartender. There's just people that come into the restaurant. And this film does such a good job at kind of dipping in and out of all of these characters' lives and storylines within this one night, within this quote unquote dinner rush. It's just basically just one night inside of a busy New York Italian restaurant, and they get it so right. He gets the food scenes right. The director, Bob Giraldi, he gets the food scenes right. He gets the vibe right. He gets the music right. He gets everything right. And, it's such a vibe and a fucking just atmosphere that he creates that you just don't want to leave. It feels like the movie ends too soon because you're like, oh, I want to go back to that restaurant. That's why I know I'm going to keep rewatching this film, because I keep wanting to visit that fucking restaurant. Because for me, it hit hard because I had worked in my 20s. I worked a lot in restaurants, not necessarily as like the waiter, but I was like bussing tables. I was washing dishes. I was in the kitchen, and even one of them was kind of a fancy restaurant, so I know what it's like to be in that atmosphere when it's super busy and things just get chaos. But, you have to depend on each other, and it's like everybody has to be at the top of their game, and you're only as strong as your weakest link kind of thing. You really feel that in the kitchen. And this film gets it right for me. It gets it more right than a lot of films have gotten that I've seen in the past, where this, much like, The Bear, if you're a fan of The Bear on Hulu, like stuff like that, like this is right up your alley, because I feel it really gets that feeling right, that the little things, and the director, of course, before he made this film, he was in the restaurant industry in New York. He owned various, successful restaurants. So this is somebody you could tell that's directing this film that really has lived and breathed this stuff, because you cannot just fakely construct that. It's like this person gets the little things right, like there's scenes where the waiters are practicing the menu before the dinner rush. They're running around, they're kind of prepping, but they're also practicing the menu and reciting it out and getting it wrong mostly. But that's such a real thing that happens that this film captures perfectly. And there's so many things like that. Another thing about Dinner Rush is that it's 90 something minutes long. This is not a super long film, but it's like it dips into the lives of so many different characters, dips in and out with little vignettes, great scenes between characters, and you kind of learn a lot about everybody, but they do it in such a small amount of time. I'm talking about, this is efficient filmmaking. This is somebody who's cut out all the fat. Like, you're watching just boom. This is all the necessary stuff, but it goes from this story to this story to this story to this story. And they all kind of interconnect in some ways. In some ways, they don't have to interconnect. It's just for the vibe of just hearing like the banter between, like, one of the waitresses is also an artist. The people at her table are all art critics. So she's kind of eavesdropping on their conversation. And the funny part about it is they're all criticizing the paintings that are in the restaurant, right? They're talking shit about all the paintings, and it ends up that the waitress that's serving them, those are actually her paintings. So it makes for a cool little funny scene, and she actually gets the best of him in the end. But it's actually the art critic is this guy, Mark Margolis, who you might know from Scarface, and he was in Breaking Bad, most recently. But man, he plays such a funny character, but such a snarky kind of art critic. But the waitress in it, the actress, man, she gets like the best of him in the end. It's super funny to watch, and there's a lot of little scenes like that, between, like, say, a bartender and just like a bunch of people at the bar, like they play like a little trivia game that lasts, a few minutes, but it just kind of, it gets those little scenes are so perfectly written, and it gets it so right, and it dips in and out so frequently between different storylines that the pacing is just so on point for me. And that's why I immediately had to make a podcast after I saw it, because I'm like, damn, this felt like a movie that I want to see more of. It's like a certain skill of how you can say so much in so little amount of time, because this film does say a lot. You might think, oh, 90 minutes. What are they gonna say? Well, guess what? They use every second appropriately. They build up different parts of it. They world build so much within this restaurant. And there's a storyline going throughout, about gambling and gangsters, and basically people, one of his partners got shot because of a gambling debt. So there's all this creeping throughout. There's all this kind of like bubbling up on the surface. There's all this kind of thriller elements of like, oh, suspense, like what's going to happen? Like these gangsters that are that they want the restaurant. They're trying to like say like, hey, Danny Aiello, I want a piece of this busy restaurant. So you have Danny Aiello trying to fight them off. You also have his son, the chef, who is battling, that wants ownership of the restaurant, that wants the dad to finally give up the reins and trust the star chef enough to run the restaurant. So you have that going on. And then you have, there's a blackout. Basically, the lights go out. There's a power outage, which happens in New York frequently a lot. So like during their busiest time, the lights go out. So it's like, oh shit, the restaurant has to scramble a little bit. And then the bartender starts playing this trivia game with all the patrons, to keep them occupied during the blackout. And it's just such a fun scene because you're like, oh shit, like they're betting money to fucking see whether he knows shit. And this is pre-Google. So it's like, it was like really impressive that he kind of knew all these facts and how quickly he can answer it, so, things like that are going on. There's a little romance between the girlfriend of the chef and the sous chef. And it's just, it gets complicated, it gets dicey, but it's handled so well and so authentically. And by such actors that are just such good character actors. One of the sous chef who has the gambling problem, you might have seen him as one of the stars in Oz from HBO. There's a lot of great actors that you'll see throughout, where you're like, oh, I recognize this person. Even Sandra Bernhardt, she plays like a food critic that comes in, and just how they interact, just how she interacts with the chef, and her character and other characters always have such a duality to them. That's the other thing. It's like, I like how each scene they kind of showed a side of them. Like, say, for example, the chef, he's tyrannical. He fires somebody on the spot and he's so mean and everything like that. But then they show another scene where he's kind of a little bit more thoughtful, and you can kind of see where his ambition lies, and you can see where some of his insecurities lie. And they show another scene where he's like very vulnerable. So it's like, wow, you're within this 90-minute time, just as you're really seeing multifaceted characters. You're seeing different sides of characters, not just one. They're not just one shade of anything. It leads up to an ending that I feel, frankly, I love this film. Like I'm saying, I'm giving this a solid 3 out of 4 stars. But the only thing keeping me from giving it a 4 stars is because I feel like the ending's a little controversial, in the sense that I just don't think logically. When you think it through, I just don't understand how it happened, or why it would happen, or why the character would choose to do that. And I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to give away all the beans or anything like that. But, it's just, that's the only thing that I'm still wrestling with in my mind. When I saw it, I'm like, the ending, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, would he do that? Why would he do that? Why wouldn't he do it somewhere else? Like, why? I was thinking in my head, I'm like, I couldn't wrap my brain around it, and I still can't. So maybe I'll revisit it and kind of have a different thought, or maybe if somebody else sees it and they want to write back to me and say what they thought about it, because I want to see what you think about it, because I want to see if you think that this is a logical ending, or if it makes sense, because I feel like the rest of the film makes sense in such an authentic way, and everything kind of goes together. And I can understand character choices and everything like that. I can understand all that, and this was the one character choice where I really couldn't understand the logic behind it. So I'm interested to see what people think. I'm interested to see what, and the cool thing about this film, Dinner Rush, is that it is available on Amazon Prime to stream for free. And I'm telling you, it's a 90-minute. It's one episode of your favorite show. It's not a big commitment, but I'm telling you, there's a big reward. Just the reward of watching a fucking well-written, well-directed, well-acted film that has an awesome storyline, that's very New York, and it has that restaurant theme vibe that I know people will connect with. If you've worked in any kind of restaurant, or if you're a foodie, this will be a film that you will connect with. And especially if you kind of grew up in New York or anyway, or if you have any love for like New York Italian, anything, like this is a great Italian American experience film. And I really love that. I really fucking love that. And it's something that I'm going to keep revisiting. And Danny Aiello, haven't talked about him enough, but man, he has some great lines in this. I talked about it was well written. Like, I feel like there was a lot of things that he said throughout where I'm always kind of chuckling. I was like, oh shit, like That was a great line. Like, he fucking kind of says it like he's a wise man. He talks like he's like super wise, like he's been through it all. And you know that guy that kind of just always talks in that fucking, everything he says is a little bit snarky, but it's also, it's got some wisdom to it. It's all got some wisdom to it. So I love his lines in the film. I love how his character is. He's got some things going on. You know, he's a restaurateur, but it seems like he's also got some bookmaking operation things going on the side and stuff, you know. So, but he's not mafia. He's not like mafia, but he's mafia adjacent. The restaurant has that kind of street cred, but also it's like he could see it going in like a crazy, his son's taking it in this crazy direction of just following all these trends and everything like that. And he doesn't even, he's at a point where he doesn't even, he looks at the menu, he doesn't relate to anything. He has this other guy, the sous chef Duncan, the guy with the gambling problem. He has him making him sausage in the back. He has him making him the old school stuff in the back because his own son, the chef, won't make it for him. That's not what he cooks. So you could see there's this kind of generational thing going on, and also this father-son thing going on about who's gonna take charge of this restaurant. You know, so and then you have also the sous chef, which kind of, you know, the dad Daniello can relate to a little more, because that sous chef kind of is more traditional, more street, you know, and cooks the food for him. But this guy also has major problems, major gambling problems. You know, he's always in the back, and you could tell he's a adrenaline junkie. He's betting on the wrong things, always losing money, and Danny Aiello is always there just getting him out of things, you know? So you have all these things bubbling up throughout the night. It's a busy night in the restaurant, but you got all, like I said, you have a couple of like gangsters that want a debt, you know? They're mobsters like in the back table, and they're watching throughout the night. So you always have that bubbling of suspense, but then it hops to romance, and then it hops to freaking just restaurateur kind of shit, you know? And then it just hops to, you know, comedy, you know? So this really bounces around in so many fucking cool ways. And it's directed by Bob Giraldi. Bob Giraldi's only directed a few films, and I haven't really seen any of his other films, but he's known for, you know, killing it with commercials and music videos. He directed Michael Jackson's Beat It, the famous video where Michael Jackson kind of had that issue with the fire and the mishap and everything like that. But, you know, he directed that fucking video, which is a classic, you know, and he's in advertising and mostly commercials and stuff. But damn, he does this film so well, and I wish he would have directed more films, because this is a fucking masterpiece. I didn't, you know, yeah, the ending's a little controversial with me or whatever. That's me nitpicking. You know, nothing's perfect, and I like it even more that it's not perfect. You know, I like that there's that little bit of the kink in it. You know, where it's like, fuck, you know. So that's, I relate to it a little more. You know, so I want you to see this film. I want you to see this film. I want to know what you think about this film. I'm looking forward to seeing more films. I'm looking forward to talking about more films. I want to even have Claudia on the podcast. I want to talk to her about the films that we kind of have in common, you know, and about some of her favorite films, and like some of the experience that we've had in the theater together, because there's been some wild times. So I'm going to bring her on here. I'm going to be on a podcast this Friday too, on the Alex Catano We Are Catanation podcast. So looking forward to that. And I'll repost some of the audio from there on here so you can listen to it and check it out. Super, super excited about that. And then we're all going to be bringing back Skills Pay Bills. So I'll be talking about Movie Manny podcast on the Skills Pay Bill podcast 2 coming up very, very soon. Me and Claudia are going to have a convo, and then Claudia's going to interview the Poets Underground. So that is coming up. But, you know, if you get a chance and you're just scrolling, you don't know what to watch, you got a free 90 minutes. I know you probably have Amazon. You got Amazon Prime. Come on. You know, it's all free. I think they just put an ad or two in the middle, whatever, but it's all free. Just watch it. I'm telling you, you will have an experience. You will be transported right into that restaurant, you know, that dimly lit restaurant with beautiful music and all that kind of organized chaos going on. And the smell of fucking oh my God, the smell of Italian food that's just been cooked as it's cooking in the back. And oh man, I want to go watch that film again. And I'm hungry. That film will make you hungry. Remember, revenge is a dish best eaten cold. Or is that best served cold? Either way, watch this film, Dinner Rush. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you soon. Movie Manny podcast out.
It's hard for you to accept they love my food, isn't it?
Food? These people wouldn't know food if it hit them in the ass. Put a meatball on their plate and they think it was a miniature bowling ball. I want food. There's nothing left to eat here. I need something, what? nourishing.
What, traditionally?
Yeah,
What's a
traditional, substantial, something that tastes good, that smells good. Where the hell's Duncan?
I'm getting out of here. We don't make meatballs here anymore.